Hey everyone, welcome to episode 34 of the How to Become a Doctor video podcast. I'm really excited about the episode today. First, just want to introduce myself. My name's Matt Durst. I'm one of the pre-health advisors here at LSU. We are the Office of PHASE, which is Pre-Health Advising, Support, and Education. Then I'll have Mr. Bowen, our director, introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm Robbie Bowen. I'm the Director of Pre-Health Programs for the College of Science here at LSU.
So, definitely check our other episodes out. Our episodes are standalone episodes, but the idea here is, we've had a lot of episodes about general things of preparing for medical and dental school, interviewing admissions deans, talking about being competitive. But, we got a special, this is our first episode really of having sort of current LSU students or fresh alumni that are, mid-cycle here, right? To give you guys a sort of what I'm calling a user experience here to the application. Okay. And this is actually was one of the students here was their idea to say, hey, look, I just went through secondary applications. That's our title of this one, secondary supplementary apps. I just went through this and it would have been nice if someone just gave me a little heads up of what those were like, a few things to know how to prepare for them because, it maybe was a little bit more, longer than they maybe thought, or a little more effort. And these students we picked because they have at least been admitted to one medical or dental school. We have one dental, two med with us today. They may be waiting on some more, but they know they'll be somewhere this upcoming year. And so I'll just have them each introduce themselves. We'll kind of start in ABC order here with first name to make it easy. So we'll start with you, Ben, going to Caroline. Just introduce yourself, your name, and what school you've in medical or dental, and just a short bit about yourselves.
Yeah. So, hi guys, my name is Benjamin Almond. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm a current senior in my last semester at LSU, applying for the current cycle. Um, yeah, so currently I'm applying to medical school. I've been accepted to two schools. I'm waiting to hear back from a handful more post-interview. And yeah, I submitted 70 secondary applications across like 30 days. So yeah, really excited to talk about that struggle.
Thank you, Ben.
Um,
Yeah, Caroline, you go ahead.
I'm Caroline Henry. I am from Shreveport, Louisiana. I am also a senior that's graduating in May in biological sciences. I am a pre-dental student applying this cycle, gotten into one school, and I'm still waiting on two others post-interview.
Daryl.
All right. My name is Daryl Higgins. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I graduated from LSU in May of 2025, so just this past year. I am applying for medical school, and I've gotten into four schools and currently waiting to hear back from three post-interview.
So if you're listening, I mean, we picked these students for a reason. They just in their, they definitely were ones who, worked hard on their writing. They've been real involved at LSU. But you can see here, even these students who have been accepted, or you heard that word waiting, and that's, unfortunately, just one little thing we're going to talk about is one thing you wish you knew kind of thing. I'll just say for them is there's a lot of waiting involved. Even our best students, if you're a good student, you wait. If you're not as good of a student, you wait. There's just a lot of waiting involved, and it's definitely more of a marathon than a sprint. But I just want to kind of start off with just defining terms here. So you know, Ben, why don't you just start with this one? What's a secondary or a supplementary application? Like what is that? What are we talking about?
Yeah, so obviously, whenever you submit your AMCAS or your TMD-SAS for medical school, you really only have one or two essays, maybe, and these are really general topics. So a supplemental application is really the school seeking out to hear more about you as a person, hear your story, hear your goals for attending medical school, and they'll ask you that through a variety of prompts addressing, failures or challenges you faced. Your kind of character arc across your 4 years in undergraduate, what you're up to now, and really general prompts so it can hear you as a person and less as an applicant. So that's how I'd just describe a secondary application.
Great. Yeah. Anything you guys want to add to that? Just that, you know, from your perspective. So let's just talk a little bit about timing. Okay. So, obviously you guys submit this primary application, you know, uh Benjamin had mentioned, the AMCAS. general app for M&D schools outside of Texas, the TIMSAS, which is Texas Medical and Dental Application, and you can see some of our other podcasts about this, but the TIMSAS is for Texas medical schools or dental if you're from Texas. There's also a COMIS for DO, sort of thing, the ADSAS for dental. But go back and watch our video if you haven't seen before. We do some timeline videos of how these things work. But obviously, you guys, I'm sure submitted y'all's primary apps early. I'm guessing like sometime in June, give or take, right? So, but why don't you tell us a little bit about, maybe Caroline, you can hit this. What was kind of the period of these secondaries coming to you after you did your primaries? When in the summer was that?
For some schools, it's like pretty much immediately after, as soon as they process your application. At least for ADSAS, we have to go through a verification period. We turn in our application, and then there's a few days, maybe a week or so, until it gets verified. And typically, some schools immediately will send you an email saying, "Hey, we received your application. Fill out our supplemental." And then some schools are selective, and so they'll only send their supplementals to people that they want to further consider.
Or how about you? What was kind of your timing? You submitted. How long did it take from when you submitted to when you're actually getting secondaries?
Yeah, kind of the same as what Caroline was saying, and I'm coming from the medical perspective. Some schools, a handful, with like as soon as you were verified, they sent your secondary applications the same day. Whereas a few schools took almost like a couple months, I think, on the long
Mm.
end, to process the application, like maybe have some type of preliminary review, and then send you the supplementary application to complete.
Hmm.
So that was ranging, I guess I submitted in, for context, maybe I think I submitted in like end of May or like early June, and then got my last supplementary application invitation in August.
That's good to note there, especially if you're watching this and let's say it's July, your dream school you haven't heard back from yet. Maybe we can say no news isn't necessarily bad news, right? That different speeds. It seems like you guys experience some different speeds of for each school. So,
Mm.
um, okay, well, let's move on a little to content. Or Robbie, did you want to say anything?
No, I was just going to say there. So Caroline mentioned like verification. So the medical and dental schools sort of pay these application services, AMCAS, ADSAS, TIMDAS, to verify all the information so that they don't have to do that for 5,000 applications or whatever. So when you submit your primary, which is the AMCAS, ADSAS, then there's a time period where everything that you reported to them is verified by staff there. That usually is a 3 week or so timeline. And then that information is then shared to the individual schools, and that's when you would be then able to receive secondary applications. And each school has a little different policy. Some public schools will automatically send secondaries to any state resident of that particular state. Others will screen based on what you submitted at the AMCAS level, and they may not send secondaries to everybody. Um, but it is a cost to you at every step. So you paid for the initial one, and then you have to pay per secondary application. So they're happy to take your money, but that's something that you have to think about. Like, is this worth my time and my effort and my money for each of those schools that you get invited to fill out a secondary?
Yeah, and, and
Yeah,
and one
yeah.
thing
Go ahead.
to I'd like to add to that, a good way you can prepare for these secondaries, especially if you're applying to a lot of public schools, is really just do a lot of things like early. I mean, so you can get the secondary application to you as soon as possible. So I'd recommend preparing your personal statement well before, May 1st, or June 1st, or whatever AMCAS opens up. I'd recommend submitting your committee application really early, because the last thing you want to do is have everything filled out for AMCAS, and your letter of rec, or your like actual secondary application doesn't come around until August, late August. And because all of these, especially public schools, are rolling admissions, you might even lose the chance at a secondary application if you wait to delay your committee application. So getting that out early, I think, is really, really important.
Yeah, that's our motto. Early is always better in the medical school application, but well done early, not rush early.
Well, and like y'all said, early, just because you submit early doesn't mean you're going to get it back early, but it's earlier than it would have been. And I just want to mention, Mr. Bowen mentioned the cost part. I do want to disclaim if you can qualify, you can look into it. You may qualify for fee assistance program for AMCAS. That would be 20 free primary applications. Get deposited for free. And then a lot of times they'll waive the secondary after that, as SAS and COMAS have similar programs. So just that is worth seeing if you qualify, looking into that.
Yeah. So to add to that, I actually did the AMC fee assistance thing. Um, and it did cover, every one of my secondary applications, and it covered actually all my primary applications as well. I'd highly recommend seeing if you at least qualify. It's really, a good thing because it's hard to pick up the hours to pay for your applications and also having to write these essays, but at the same time, it could be a big financial burden as a student. So I'd recommend looking into it for any student watching this.
Yeah, and like you said, early, right? Like you have to get, they run out of money eventually and they have to approve you. So you got to get on there early to make sure you qualify and fill it out so that you're not looking into it right when it's time to apply. So, but I really want to get the content a little bit more, uh, you guys have used this word essay, which isn't always everyone's favorite word, but you have to do it, right? Y'all aren't going into it to be writers, but you have to. And so that's probably the most scary thing, I think for students, like, what do I put on this essay? That kind of thing. So I'd love it just for you guys to share like some of the types of essay topics you're writing about and really how you decided on, how to write something good, that's going to stand out, that's going to get you that interview.
I can
Yeah.
start with this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, some like this general like prompts or things are definitely very common. It's just why do you want to go to our school? How will our institution make you or prepare you to become the type of doctor you want to become? What types of adversity have you been through and your resilience through that? Any examples of time you've been a leader? Any examples of times you've been working in a team? Any examples of time you failed or bounced back? I even had a few schools asked for a supplementary application, like an essay that was fairly long. That was about like they just asked me to tell me just who you are, like so more of like an autobiography, which was an unexpected space. It was so daunting at first, but I feel like it really gave me a chance to potentially write probably one of the best parts of my application is just truly just talk about all of the influences that shaped me. Um, you also may have some questions that may deal with like equity or like ethics, some answering some ethical questions as well. But I think just general advice when it comes down to answering any of these is just tell a story, and make it be true to yourself, of course. Tell a story that answers the prompt first and foremost, but also is engaging, is shows how you have grown, shows what you truly care about, and shows what you would be interested in doing at that school in particular, or bringing, or to that community that you hope to move to in the future.
Thanks.
Yeah. So to add to that, what he said about, what you're going to do at the school, I think that part's really important. Those supplemental essays, obviously your AMCAS is very broad. You're applying to multiple schools. The supplemental essays really narrow down, why this school in particular, not just why medical school. So I'd recommend really doing your research for these secondary applications, see what programs are offered, see if you're a good fit. I mean, this is your time to really go, browse the shelves of medical schools and see what you can really do there. And matching your essay to the mission, or even seeing if you match the mission at all. Because you might, think you match well. You might want to go to this big name school, but the mission there just doesn't really align with your goals. And while they might be big into like some certain fields, it might not be your field. So doing your research into the school is, I think, wildly important for these essays. And like Daryl said, well said, writing a story is so important. I mean, don't be afraid to get personal here. really show your growth and how you see the world as a future physician, future dentist, um, it's something you can do really well with these secondary application prompts.
Mm. No, yeah, Caroline, why don't you weigh in on a little bit of the dental perspective? What was there something specific kind of maybe you would see on the dental one that you might have not seen the medical ones, but what was that like for you on the dental side?
For dental app, like secondaries, I would say a lot of the same overlap, like why this school, why dentistry, but also dentistry really likes to pride itself on being a people profession. And so I've gotten plenty of secondary essays that have been how do you interact with different groups of people? How do you work as a team? They want to also see like your interpersonal connections and how your relational bandwidth is. And so I would say for dental secondaries, be well aware to maybe talk about how you are socially, how you are interacting with different groups of people.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so much more narrow, right? Where the medical one, like you can go be a doctor and not talk to people as a radiologist or pathologist, but I guess in dentistry, yeah, they know, hey, you got to be able to talk to people while they can't talk back to you because as your dentist does, trying to ask you questions while they're operating. So okay, so yeah, I want to. That was a great general sweep there, and Daryl kind of hit on this surprise element, but I guess I want to kind of swoop back around on this question one more time because you guys kind of gave the landscape to kind of say, okay, well, what kind of would have been nice to know about it in advance? I know Daryl mentioned the tell us about yourself essay where you're like, oh, that's a tough prompt. But what about a secondary, like, oh, that like you maybe hit page two, you're like, I didn't know that was going to be on there, or man, that would have been nice to know. Anything you guys wanted to share on that part?
Yeah, so I'd like to share this, and Daryl did touch on this. A lot of the prompts are the same, you know. And whenever you open up one of these secondary application prompts and you just scroll and you scroll and you see one, two, three, four, eight, essays that are 500 words. That was one of my schools, eight 500-word essays. That's a lot of work. But if you compare the prompts between the schools, other applications, I mean, those eight application prompts have already broadly been discussed before. And so what we can really do before to prepare for these, so you can crank out all these applications, especially you're applying to, 10, 15, 20, 25 schools, is really just get a general landscape of the stories you would like to share with these committees, just doesn't have to be like a full blown thing, just a nice progression that you can detail and you can use to connect to other schools. So that's exactly what I did. I have a Google Doc where I just wrote broad general stories I'd like to discuss in my secondary applications. And for each school, I kind of individualized the essay itself. But since I already had the story, I had enough of a backbone to just get it through and get it done in a relatively short amount of time. And I think that preparation for it helps a ton, especially for rolling admissions as we keep, hammering down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think something I didn't know, I guess, going into it was kind of as Ben was saying, just how many there would be potentially for each school or just how long. Uh, Thankfully, if once you are, of course, finished with committee application and your formal AMCAS application, working activities and personal statement, all of that, there are an abundance of websites online you can go and find past prompts from previous years if you are ready and you've spent some time thinking about, like Ben was saying, the themes or stories you want to tell, um, so that you can then go look at, say, hey, this school has asked these same questions the past 3 years. It's more than likely that they will ask something similar. I didn't personally, I think that term is called like pre-writing. I didn't personally do that, but it was useful for me to kind of just go ahead and have an idea of, okay, this school may ask me about this. I can go ahead and maybe if nothing really rings like a bell right now about what I can write for this specific prompt, then I can go and have time to think about it and workshop it, maybe go through a few different versions and not feel pressed for time when I actually do receive the supplementary application.
Mm.
I think for myself, just being mentally prepared for the load. obviously on the front load for AdSAS, some schools already have prompts in this like in their built in the AdSAS application for that specific school. But there were plenty of applications outside of that where I had like a week to do it. And I got sent it in like October. And so I had like exams and I had other schoolwork going on and extracurriculars. And so just being mentally prepared for that load. So when I get that email, I'm not caught off guard.
Yeah, and I do have
Yeah.
one thing to add to that real quick about medical. Um, yeah, being prepared for that load is so important. I mean, some of them are due so soon after you get them. I had one that I got in like July 21st and it was due by August 1st. So that's not a very quick turnaround. So being prepared to, sit down and write, spend my nights, writing after I get off work is something I was not expecting. And that was definitely a big part of the cycle.
Mm. Hopefully your fellow students can watch this and they can at least, they'll still have to do it after work, but they'll know it's coming.
Yeah, I think that, what you said, trying to have not necessarily it pre-written, but the things that you want to bring out, like, make a list of the attributes that you want to bring forward about yourself. And then, when you have those kind of narrowed down, you can sort of, address what the actual prompt is, but I want to talk about my communication skills, or I want to talk about, the specific positions that I've had. So if you kind of have that sort of as a framework of where you know what you're going to talk about, what you want to bring to the attention, and then you respond to the specific question or the specific, what that school's mission is, or those types of things.
And if I may, kind of bouncing off that, Mr. Bowen, I believe you all gave us this advice. Um, but like your application is a book about you, and this
Yeah,
is all they really get to see about you before in the event you are invited to interview. So we have a lot of space in our primary application to write about all of our experiences we've done, but there's only so many characters for each. But with the supplementary applications, secondaries, it gives you really flexibility to make yourself a full person, talk about
yeah,
things that aren't related at all to your medical interests or your medical trajectory into going into being a physician in some cases or a dentist. Really take advantage of the opportunity to put your full self forward and make a full, nice picture.
yeah.
I appreciate you talking about the interview here because that's kind of what I want to move towards next. It's kind of like was there an interplay between your secondary interview? And it might have been different at different schools. Like, did they comment on one of your essays? Was it blind? Was it a mix? What was that like? I'd love to hear from each of you guys.
Yeah, so for me, it was a really big mix between all of them. I had MMIs where they didn't talk about my application at all, and then I had one-on-one hour-long interviews where I mean they're just asking me about these stories I talked about. Can you tell me a little bit more about this? Can you tell me a little bit more about this? So it varies a lot, but I'd go in expecting, the latter rather than the former. Expect them to talk about your applications, expect them to have you elaborate in these stories um, rather than just expecting all these MMIs that are kind of distant from your actual application.
Ben,
Yeah.
why don't you just share Daryl can go next, but Ben, just share what an MMI is, just in case we didn't know what that was, because they
Oh
kind of know
yeah.
that's coming. That's an interview thing, but go ahead.
Yeah, so an MMI is a multiple mini interview is what it stands for. And in terms of format, typically it's like 7 to 12 or so, like 7-minute interviews. And you're there and they'll give you like a prompt up on the screen and you read it. You have 2 minutes to read it and you have 7 minutes to talk about it with an interviewer. And it's kind of just like if you ever take the Casper, it's very similar to that, except you're speaking to someone and they can ask you follow-up questions, which is a little bit more terrifying than the Casper itself. But you get into a rhythm of it. They're not anything to be as scared about as they might sound.
I did three different interviews and they were all incredibly different. And I would say kind of what y'all were talking about, like be prepared to talk about your application in depth. Because either like I got questions very specific to my application or I did get comments about my essays. Um, but also sometimes I did get like interview questions where they were like kind of sort of familiar with my application. And so but they were expecting me to talk about what I was doing in depth. For one of the dental schools I interviewed at, research is huge. And so I had to be able to explain every single project I had been on, even though they just knew enough to know how many projects I had been on, but they were expecting me to fill in those blanks pretty significantly. And so just being warmed up on what you exactly talked about on your application is so crucial because you just don't know what they're going to ask you, even if it's a 25 minute interview. There's a lot they could ask you in that time.
I think that's important too, like to know what the school's focus or emphasis is because you knew this was a research intensive school. You could anticipate they're going to ask about research. So things like that, you definitely want to do your homework before.
Yeah. So speaking to the research intense schools, so one of my schools, my top choice right now, I interviewed with them and they're a big research school and I got into the interviewer portal and the first question I was asked was, how do you feel about hypotheses? And I had no clue how to answer that. And so I just had to like very slowly break down the question with the interviewer and it turned very casual afterwards. So a big thing with these interview processes is just to be personable because sometimes they'll just ask you these off guard like these questions off guard just to see how you respond to it. Because there's no right answer to any of the questions they ask, really. It's just how you perceive it and how you go about tackling it and dealing with, maybe being a little uncomfortable or something. I think that's the most important part. And definitely being able to connect it maybe to the school's focus is very good. And that's kind of a recurring theme in this whole cycle, being really keeping it relevant, not only to your future medical practice, but to being a medical student.
Daryl, why don't you share that interplay? Like, what was it like for you filling out all these essays and then, a time gap, and then were you asked about them a lot? What was that like for you?
Yeah, in some schools, I would say remember it's hard for me to remember at this like point which specific school because in each school, your interviewers have differing levels of access to your applications. Kind of Caroline hit on, and so and it could differ from one interviewer to another. Frankly, to simplify it for myself, I kind of viewed all of my interviews is like these people don't really know about my application. It's my job to tell my story and talk, and answer the questions candidly. And talk about the things that I care about if when given the opportunity. Um, but I was often asked like the really similar, or if not the exact same questions that I had on a secondary application for that school, or just any other school's secondary applications. Um, so reviewing what I wrote on the secondary applications was a big part of my interview preparation, because then it allowed me to go back to all the research that I had done for the school, like Ben was saying, and really refocus in on, okay, how do I fit with that school's mission? What are some experiences I've had that maybe that are that school that the school is passionate about, doing in their community? What are different parts how do they serve? How does the school serve their community? Thinking about those things as well as often things I wrote about in the supplementary applications, things I'd like to get involved in at the school. So the supplementary applications are serious because they're your first part of interview preparation.
Mm. All right, well, we're about to wrap up, but I just want to give you guys each individually one kind of last piece of advice, parting words to these students that are about to go through what you guys just went through this last cycle. So just maybe something you feel like didn't get emphasized or covered that you wanted to share today.
Yeah, so one thing I'd like to emphasize to every student watching this is be yourself and present a polished product from yourself. You know, using AI to help you with your supplement applications is fine, but don't let it write the whole thing because at the end of the day, it's not you speaking. So you really want to be yourself and you want to give yourself every chance to focus on these applications because they're the barrier to interviews.
Mm,
Um, so yeah.
mm,
I would say don't feel like you have to give the answer they're expecting in supplementals. They're going to be reading a ton of applications that are just giving them the answers that you think should be the answer. And those times I've been in interviews and they've told me, I really like your essays. They're very different than other applications I've read, or when I took that risk of like, hey, this is kind of a unique experience, but I framed it and I took it seriously and related it back to my passion for wanting to do dentistry. And so I would say take advantage of what makes you unique and don't be afraid if it doesn't immediately correlate to dentistry, medicine, or whatever profession.
right.
It's hard to follow y'all too, but I think in my case, my writing and telling, stories about things I was passionate about, my experiences, and connecting that then to the community that the school is in or the school's mission, were a big part of how I feel was a big part of how I was able to get interviews at schools that I did not expect to get interviews at all. So definitely, please take them seriously. It's a long process, but it's just one more checkpoint of one other like thing to overcome before you finally get to the end and the main goal. Only thing really separating you from your goals is just the time you put in and the time that will elapse and the effort and the care you put into it. So put some care and thought into it. It could really give you a leg up.
Thank you. Robbie, anything else you wanted to share with students?
I know we're about out of time, but I just wanted to ask, were you given a chance to ask questions of the interviewer? And if so, what did you ask?
Yeah, so I was given for almost every one of my applicable interviews, I was able to ask questions, and I asked a lot of really different questions for the different schools. Sometimes I just had an interviewer that I just really connected with, so I asked about what their role might be and how their passions that I'm seeing them talk about, how that might be connected at the school's mission. Um, so I asked a lot about the interview himself. Sometimes I'd ask about programs if I'm talking to a student, ask what their experience is there. Um, because I think asking questions on a application level to admissions committee, it shows that you're interested in the school. You're not just applying there to apply there. You're actually, genuinely considering it and you want to get the most out of that experience. So use the interviewers or the interviews as a really time to learn more about the school so you can't read on the website.
Mm,
A
I
question
would
I would always ask is like how either mostly to a student if they were like a fourth year student or advanced student or if they were a faculty member like a teacher is I'm interested in your school but how do you feel that attending XYZ University would give me an advantage or really prepare me not only just for residency but to go back in the community and serve as a physician and I would really it would sometimes make the oftentimes make the interviewer like sit and really think about their experience and then give me a true like from their personal experience of the best things about their favorite things about their school and about their experiences that I could really take into count when I'm thinking about do is this the best place, truly for me to grow into the position that I want to become. So serious questions like that, but also it's just if you share an interest with your interviewer, it's a conversation. And so I believe I asked the interviewer one time about he had like a big like NFL team like pennant on in his background. So I asked him, the team had just like fired their coach. So I asked him about that, not the focus of the interview, something we didn't spend that long talking about, right? But then he then went and asked me about, LSU football. So we had a conversation and connection about that, and as well as, asking questions about the school, making sure you were, to show your interest in the school.
I think for myself with the interviews, I tried to make them more personal questions about the interviewer themselves, like how Daryl was saying, especially just because of how dentistry, like kind of was talking about earlier, wants people that are people. And so just trying to ask a lot about like if I have like an academic dentist, like how they're able to balance seeing patients but also doing research, or kind of what Daryl was saying, if there was something in common that came up during the interview, getting to talk about that more. And so just trying to kind of have general ideas of things you could ask, and then you get into the interview and then kind of can gauge from there because there might be better questions that you come up with during the interview. I think having one to two set that you're like, I think these are good safety questions if I can't think of anything else that don't sound like I just chat GPT'd what are good questions to ask at the end of an interview. Just trying to either show genuine interest in your interviewer or in the school is kind of what you can solidify at the end.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add there, I know we're kind of short in time, but one thing I'd like to really add is and emphasize for these interviews is the interviewer is going to have to write about you. They're going to have to give some reporting you at the end, right? So if you end off with a really nice, personable note, let them know that you're not just a bot to answer their questions or their follow-up questions. Being able to ask, just something that makes you human. I talked with one interviewer about running and he asked me for tips on how to run far distances, and I talked to one interviewer, a pulmonologist. We talked about poker for whatever reason. We talked about playing poker, and just being able to talk about these personable things that make you, how you de-stress, how you live your life, and showing that you can actually talk to patients in the future about things other than health is really, really important.
Awesome. Well, thank you each for your time. I know you guys are busy, but thanks for taking some time to pass it on to the next class behind you. Congrats to each of you for at least getting into, one school. You're going to start next year, and best of luck with your future. Looking forward to, seeing where you guys go. And just want to encourage you as students to definitely know this could be you next year, right? You work hard, you do the hard work like they did. They talked about how much challenge it was, but here they are paying, it's paid off. Now they know they're going to become a doctor or dentist, and just reach out to obviously Mr. Bowen or I, or to your students in the class above you for help. So thanks again.